Today we present the Chairman's Award for only the 12th time. Remember, this is the 67th event of the series, to Barbara Carrasco, an extraordinary Chicana artist and activist with the courage to do right.
Well, I'm very honored and grateful to be given the Chairman's Award from such a prestigious organization as the, I have to read this because I'm nervous, the Chairman's Award. You know, as a muralist, creating visual narratives of our culture is both a privilege and a responsibility. When I was commissioned by the Community Redevelopment Agency years ago to design a mural about Los Angeles, I immediately thought, I'm going to do it on the history of Los Angeles. So I set out to meet with historians to make sure that everything in the mural was accurate historically. So I went to, first met with Bill Mason, who was the historian for the Natural History Museum. So it kind of went full circle, going back there now. So Bill Mason, who opened up his archives to me of photographs of early Los Angeles, the founding families of Los Angeles. So he was a wonderful human being who really helped me decide what was relevant about this history. Then he told me the original title of Los Angeles, El Pueblo de la Reina, the Queen. As soon as he told me the original title, I thought right away, oh my God, the Queen. Okay, I'm gonna start with, so I decided to have the history of LA in a woman's hair. She's the mythical Queen of Los Angeles. So I mean, that's crazy, huh? I was 26 and a half years old at the time. So that was, 1981 when they approved the entire sketch. And so I was really surprised when I met with the CRA in a boardroom. They had the mural sketches on the walls, and all the images, there was 15 images circled in red, and those were considered too controversial. They wanted me to eliminate them. And so one of them was, I was really shocked. The Japanese internment scene, this is a direct quote from, all Anglo men saying to me that the Japanese do not want to be reminded of the internment camps. So, wow, none of them are Japanese. So I said, well, let me go and invite, so I invited 3 major Japanese organizations to come and see the mural, and they wrote the most beautiful letters of support, that yes, it was a negative chapter in their history, but it has to be included so that it's never forgotten or repeated. And so as a muralist, those letters of support from the community are integral part of doing a mural. There were so many people that helped on that mural. I can't even, I only have 5 minutes, so Mickey told me. But it's interesting, we hired 17 kids through the Summer Youth Employment Program. They were getting paid minimum wage for working in the summer on the mural. And that was a really great part of the mural, because these kids came from historically under, I guess you would call them at-risk kids, 4 areas of the city who they didn't get along at all, until I told them that this is our history. You should be proud of it. And so at the first couple of days, they didn't get along very well. And I told them, I said, well, if there's one fight or one skirmish, I'm going to fire all of you. And they said, wow. And I said, well, I could do this on my own. I could hire a professional artist to help me, but I think this is a good experience for you to be part of this mural making process. And so they were really good about no skirmishes or anything, but when they were painting sort of like not very carefully. So I said during the mural dedication, I'm going to say, Tina from Echo Park did that. And And Alex he was from 18th Street. I said, I'm going to point and tell them that you painted that. And he said, oh, no, you can't do that. I said, oh, yeah, I can. Because I'm not going to take credit for a mediocre work, And so anyway, they were really good after that. I grew up in a Mar Vista Gardens housing project, so I kind of already knew how to talk to them. But anyway, so the whole thing was such an amazing project because it involved 15 scenes they felt were too negative, including the last black slave in LA, Biddy Mason, who was taken from Ohio to Los Angeles, and she was going to go from Los Angeles to Texas to be a slave with her owner, and she read the California law against slavery and won her freedom. So she's a very, very inspiring person. This is the late 1800s, and there are monuments around the city to her in honor of her. And so I told the CRA people, I said, she's a really incredibly heroic person, brave person, and so she's in. I'm not taking her out of there. And so at some point I had to get some legal counsel, and I was on television, and attorney Jim Blancarte, who is now a judge, called me up and he said, I'd like to represent you for pro bono. I had no idea what that meant. So anyway, but so it was really great because, he did represent me. He was really great. So in essence, the CRA washed their hands of the mural. I put it in storage. Cesar Chavez of the United Farm Workers let me keep it there for a long time until it became a national monument, and then I had to take it out of there. And so when I was doing a lot of fundraising activities around the mural, this one woman who's a philanthropist, Vera Campbell, so grateful to her, she loved the story about the young people that worked on the mural. That's her thing, about empowering young people. So she made it possible through her donation for the Natural History Museum to acquire the mural. And so it's going to go up there permanently in the new Welcome Center across the street from USC, there's another museum being built right there right now. But so the mural will probably be open to the public mid-year. And I hope all of you get to come and see it. It's a really amazing mural. It's 16 by 80 feet. It was a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of great community people and support from family and friends. And I'm sad that my husband's not here to share this moment, but my beautiful daughter is here too, and she's so. But I also want to say that I was really fortunate to have Dolores Huerta advise me on keeping the fight on a grassroots level. I remember her saying that to me several times, and I'm also a proud member to be on her board of directors. Anyway, thank you.
We are delighted to be joined by the 41st Mayor of Los Angeles and the former Speaker of the California Assembly, Antonio Villaraigosa. At our Tribute to Mayors event, also convened by the Latino Leaders Network twice a year, during the winter and summer meetings of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the Antonio Villaraigosa Leadership Award is presented twice a year to a mayor, regardless of race or ethnicity, who is doing right by including us. Ever a public servant, recently appointed by Governor Newsom as infrastructure advisor to the state of California, please welcome the Honorable Antonio Villaraigosa, who will introduce our honoree for keynote remarks.
I just told him I'm going to talk for 20 minutes. Just kidding. The mayor that received that award, and it's for promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion and building coalitions, the mayor that had the best line was Mayor Garcetti. Present the award, it's a club, I always tell him. And, we're in that small little club, so we're in San Francisco, and I give him the award, and he says, just deadpan, speaking eloquently the way he always does. He says, just what I always wanted. Just what I always wanted, an award with Antonio Villaraigosa's name. I'm gonna put it right in front of my desk and pray to him every day. And of course I said, I would if I were you. We're great to have the current mayor and the soon-to-be mayor. I asked her to come a few hours ago, and I was proud of the way she was received. There's a lot of noise right now, everybody. And that noise became a big screeching noise. And I've said my whole life, I'm here today because it was a Civil Rights Act. My inauguration, I said, I'm here today because there's a Martin Luther King, a Rosa Parks, a Dolores Huerta, and a Cesar Chavez. I understood the role of the first. It's to open up the door for the rest, to break glass ceilings, to shatter them. And I couldn't be prouder that a woman I've known for 50 years, that I've worked with on the south, she lived on the south side, I lived on the east side, and we worked together, and we organized African Americans and Latinos. We have always understood, those of us who got a good college education, you didn't get there because you were so smart, or just because you were smart. You got there because people knocked down the door so we could get in. And this coalition is important. It's important because this town is 70% Latino, African American, and Asian. 70% of my staff, Miguel, was Latino, African American, and Asian. And I think you're going to see a woman who understands that this coalition is so important, because we got to take on the issue of a city, we want to be on top of a shining hill, but let's be honest, there's just too much poverty, too much homelessness, too many people working hard every day and not making it. So thank you for that warm reception you gave her. And now let's do what Mayor Garcetti said. Let's all join hands. Let's work together. Let's bring this city forward to its rightful place, the city of America's hope and promise. I couldn't be prouder to announce the next honoree, my tocayo. You know what Anthony means, brother? Incomparable. That's what you are. Anthony first got involved in politics. His first political race was mine in 2001. And when he first told me that, he was already elected. And I said, "Were you trying to make me feel old or what?" Because I'll tell you something. He got to the legislature and he just flew. I know a little bit about that job. I think some of you know. And I could tell you, it's hard to get elected as soon as he got elected. It took me 3 years. You got there before that. And he's been speaker longer than anyone except for Jesse Unruh and Willie Brown. How about that? And something about Anthony that always made me proud, he's always remained so humble. When you walk into the speaker's office, any of you ever been in that office? A few of you? When you walk into that office, as someone said, you feel like you got to put on a suit. I mean, it's like, wow, grand, a room like this. And I'll tell you something. There he is, sitting on a chair, humble, smart, dedicated, committed, speaker who has virtually every year expanded that majority. I mean, when I was speaker, I had I think I had 42 votes when I first got elected. I took it to 47, and that was like pretty historic. And then you take it to 53? 63. I thought your first one was 53, and then I know how many you got now. No. And so, you couldn't be prouder. He was involved in education. A lot of you don't know, but something we got similar. You had a .83 GPA. I had a 1.4 GPA, except I was kicked out of school before that, as almost everybody knows, and didn't graduate until I went to night school 4 nights a week. And then you got involved in education, particularly early education, worked at MAOF. I'll tell you something, I really wanted to be here, really wanted the honor, didn't ask for it, but Mickey gave it to me. I was glad I had the honor to be able to present him. The Speaker of the Assembly is no small thing. The first Speaker in modern history was Cruz Bustamante. I've always said we were brothers, we were roommates. I had 17 votes, he had 18 votes. And I said, you know what, brother? You go first. A year and a half later, I became Speaker. And it was really important to me back then, not just to be a Latino speaker, but to be a speaker for everyone. And I tried to model that. And that's what you've been, Anthony. You've been a speaker for all of us. That's why you make us proud. And I'll tell you, he's going to be Speaker for another 8 months. And you're going to go down in history, not just as one of the longest serving speakers, but a role model for so many of us. Someone who never has ever forgotten where he came from. Please help me in welcoming our honoree, Mr. Speaker, Anthony Rendon, my tocayo. Hey, Mickey, is mine this heavy? Jesus, Mickey, get up here. Oh, well, we'll do it right now, baby. Here, you hold on. There you go.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was 2003. I had 3 weeks vacation left at MAOF, and I took all 3 to volunteer on your campaign. It was the best thing I did. It was the smartest thing I did. Thank you for your leadership, your friendship, and your mentorship. You've been incredible. Thanks. I want to thank Mickey. Long before I knew Mickey, I knew of Mickey. I knew of his incredible work. It's a testament to how old I am now that I first became aware of your work not on the last census, not on the census before that, but on the census even before that. And your leadership and commitment to our community is unparalleled. So thank you very much, Mickey, and thanks for this honor. To Barbara, it's funny to share a stage with an artist. I always say I got into politics because I didn't have the artistic skill to match my love for the arts. My first job was 2 blocks away at the Museum of Contemporary Art. I wrote my doctoral dissertation on the early 20th century avant-garde, Dadaism and Surrealism. My honeymoon was in Zurich because I wanted to go to Café Voltaire, where Dadaism began. And my wife went, which is proof that she loves me. But to be with an artist, I always say that the politics in a democracy is about providing, obviously, leadership. It is. We know that. But within the context of a democracy, what we do in government, what we do as politicians, is to make sure that the will of the people is adhered. So we're not necessarily always at the vanguard. We're trying to make sure that we are, but we're trying to adhere to what society wants. Artists are not like that. artists are way ahead of all of us. So thank you for being ahead of us. It means a lot to us. And here goes my speech. Mickey dropped by the office about a month ago, and he asked me to receive this award. And I said, "What do you want me to talk about?" And I should look at the clock. I gotta get out of here too. I said, "What do you want me to talk about?" And he said, "All I want you to talk about is your story." And as someone who's interested in the arts, as someone who's interested in storytelling, the first thing I thought of was which story do you tell, right? There's a lot of stories, a lot of different aspects of me, a lot of sort of different subjectivities. Antonio talked about, the kid who was in high school and had a 0.83 grade point average and was, the polite phrase in the 1980s was academically disqualified from school. And started college at 20 at a community college. There's that story. There's that part of me. There's the academic who wanted to study early 20th century avant-garde because he wanted to live in Zurich, right? He wanted to go off and study the most, arcane and specific elements of something very minute, and to live, quite intentionally a life that was to an extent insular and looking backward. Then there was someone who fell in love with public service and worked for the Mexican American Opportunity Foundation and Plaza for about 20 years doing early childhood education and gang programs. And then the person who went on to run for office and to serve an elective office. And those are all stories. Those are all different aspects of me. And they're all seemingly contradictory in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, it doesn't seem like the same person who's lived through all of these things. And when I think about our community, that's really what we're like. I often hear people say, they hear somebody tell their story and they say, that's the immigrant experience, that's the Latino experience. There's not a Latino experience. There's millions and millions, and a million and millions of different types of stories. And if we're living our lives meaningfully and with great intention, then we're conscious of those different places where we've come from, and we're conscious of the different people that we're in the room with. And right now, this is a damn good room. I could just about thank everybody in this room for the role that they played in my life. When you think about the experiences of our community, and when Mickey says, tell your story, again, a million different stories. To go to El Salvador with my friend, Wendy Carrillo, the first Salvadoran American to ever serve in the California legislature. And to hear her story, we think we're a big deal when we become speaker, Antonio. I remember the president of El Salvador pushed me out of the way because he saw Wendy. It's like, get out of my way. She's a celebrity. Her story is a distinct story and an important story, and a story that needs to be told. So in thinking about the story that I would choose, and I'm glad you mentioned Teleku, because I was telling Michael today, I've been awake since 1 a.m. I have a 3-year-old. She had a tough night. And then I had to go join these striking workers at Starbucks at 6. So by the time she fell asleep, I looked at my clock and I thought, if I fall asleep now, I'm going to sleep for 2 hours. This isn't very helpful. So this morning, I watched the sunrise, and I remembered a very distinct story that I think helps to sum up my life and our community. I saw the sunrise. It was the first week of October in 2019, shortly before COVID. And our daughter was born on September 16th, Independence Day. Our daughter was born on September 16th, and my wife and I had this sort of alternating thing, right? Like you get up and feed her, and then we go back and forth, right? And 24 days after my daughter was born, my brother-in-law, John, was released from San Quentin. He'd been incarcerated for 17 years. And he got out 24 days after my daughter was born. And of course, my mom wanted to be with the baby in the house. And then Annie's mom wanted to be with the baby in the house. And then we decided that we would take John in because he'd been incarcerated for 17 years. Now, I'm a guy who lived alone for 26 years of his life. And now I'm living in a house with a baby, 2 grandmothers, my brother-in-law, my wife, right? And I'm just like, I'm freaking out, right? And I remember we used to call it the alarm going off. The alarm was the baby, right? So the baby starts crying. I get up and I go into the kitchen, and there's 7 people in the house. And I go into the kitchen. I'm tiptoeing. I have the baby in my hands, trying to get the baby away from my wife so she can sleep. And I go into the refrigerator to get food for the baby. And I look up, and my mom is on one side, and my mother-in-law is on the other. My mom, a very tough Latina woman. My mother-in-law, a very tough Vietnamese woman. And I'm opening the fridge, and they say, "What are you doing?" in like a bunch of different accents, right? "What are you doing?" And I say, well, I'm kind of embarrassed, right? I'm like, well, I'm getting out the breast pump container. And they looked at me like pathetic hipster, like, what's a breast pump container, right? And I'm like, well, we read about it on the internet, right? And they start like telling me like their advice on like what you should be doing and this and that. And then all of a sudden we hear this, and remember there's just, 7 people live in the house now. We don't have that many bedrooms, right? So my brother-in-law was sleeping in the living room right off the kitchen. If you've been to my house, and you're all invited after. If you've been to my house, the kitchen is like feeds into the living room. My brother-in-law was sleeping on the sofa. And then, we see him, and my wife comes out, and now it's 3 a.m, and there's 7 people awake in the middle of the living room. And I got I poured myself some bourbon, and bourbon in one hand and breast pump milk in the other. It's like a new hipster cocktail. And we all sat down, and all, 7 of us, or 6 and a half, we all sat down. And I remember my brother-in-law looking out the window, and in San Quentin, you can't see the sunrise because of the way the cells are oriented. And he said it was his first sunrise in 17 years. And I remember my mother-in-law talking about what it meant to have him out of prison. And I remember my mom talking about what it meant to have her granddaughter. And it's 3 a.m, and we're having this conversation, right? I'm just really sleepy. But I recognized then how meaningful it was. And to hear my brother-in-law talk about his 17 years, to hear my mother-in-law talk about stepping over human corpses to get on a boat to get out of Vietnam, to hear my mom talk about her stories about my journey and how I ended up here. And for me, that moment was this really sort of special moment where all of our stories kind of combined, right? And that's what's in this room today. And the best of us as a city is when we have those moments, those shared moments together, and we tell those stories. And I remember my mom, the sun was rising, and I said, my brother-in-law said, "It's really beautiful." And my mom said, "Yeah, it's very beautiful, but there's also something very sad about a sunrise." And I remember her saying that. And I think that's the reality. When Mayor Villaraigosa talks about too much poverty, when Mayor Villaraigosa talks about the fact that we're paying too high in terms of rents, when we talk about homelessness, for us to be in a beautiful, ornate room celebrating one another is wonderful. But we can't forget the sadness. In every sunrise, there is tremendous hope, tremendous potential, but a tremendous need to do good. Over the course of my 10 years in the legislature, I think we've done good. There's a lot more work to do. And And when Karen Bass walked in as a father of a 3-year-old daughter, I thought, this is another beautiful sunrise. This is another beautiful opportunity to make something meaningful of this day. But ultimately, that's up to us, right? Every single day is ultimately up to us to make something of it. So I want to thank you for this honor. I want to thank all of you for what you mean in my life and what you mean to our state. But we have work to do. We have work to do to help one another. We have work to do to help our new mayor. So let's do it. Thank you.